While the man was wandering around, he found the nanny in the room looking at herself in the mirror. When he raised his camera, the nanny sensed something and turned her head to look at him. He quickly turned his head away. After a while, when Chris looked back again, the nanny was gone. Seeing the gardener chopping firewood not far away, Chris intended to go over and chat for a while. However, before he could say a word, the gardener said, "It's all my pleasure." Chris was very puzzled upon hearing this. Then Chris said, "I haven't greeted you yet, I'm Chris." But the gardener replied, "I know your name. Isn't she so lovely?" Chris was even more puzzled by the gardener's strange words. Then the gardener said he was sorry about last night. He was jogging at night and didn't mean to scare you. Did you talk to Ruth's mother last night? Hearing this, Chris remembered the conversation with Ruth's mother. After parting with the gardener, Chris wanted to have a cigarette, but he felt like vomiting at the sight of it. Had he been hypnotized by Ruth's mother? With this question in mind, Chris went to Ruth and said, "Your mother seems to have hypnotized me." Ruth pretended to be clueless and said, "I can't believe it." Then Chris asked about the gardener. The guy was acting very strangely, as if he liked you. Ruth said, "Stop it. You must be joking. If it's true, I'll tell my dad to fire him." Just at that moment, the guests came to the party. But strangely, it was the gardener, who was a servant, who went to greet the master's guests. Besides, the guests all hugged the gardener warmly. It wasn't long before Ruth brought Chris to meet the guests, and these guests were all very friendly to Chris, even touching his body. After hanging out with Ruth for a while, Chris felt rather awkward and made up an excuse to leave. After wandering around for a while, Chris came to a place where there was almost no one, but there were rows of chairs. As soon as he walked over, the only man on the scene suddenly said, "Ignorant." Chris asked him who he was talking about, and the man said, "All of you." Then he began to introduce himself and said that he knew Chris admired his work very much. It turned out that the man was the owner of an art gallery. Chris often submitted his photography works to this gallery, so the man had heard of him but had never actually seen his works. As he was blind, after chatting with the man for a while, Chris went back to his room alone. The atmosphere at this party was so oppressive that he was already finding it unbearable. What was even more bizarre was that when Chris walked into the hall and up the stairs, all the guests strangely fell silent and stared in the direction he had left. As soon as he got back to his room, Chris found that his phone was still not charged, but he was sure that he had charged it. Looking at the nanny who was tidying up the room, Chris suspected that she had unplugged his charger. Chris had just finished a phone call with a friend when he turned around and saw the nanny quietly standing at the door of the room. This nanny really gave him a big fright. It turned out that the nanny had come to apologize to Chris. She had accidentally knocked over the charging cable while tidying up the room. Out of politeness, she didn't dare to touch it again, which led to this misunderstanding. Chris said it was okay and that he hadn't intended to tell you. As a result, the nanny suddenly became extremely strange. She was smiling, but there were tears in her eyes, as if she was about to cry. The nanny forced a smile, pulling up the corners of her mouth, but couldn't hold back her tears as she looked at Chris.
The Armitages are so good to us.
Having said that, the nanny left in a strange way.